and welcome back. A couple years ago on Let's Talk Writing, we had an amazing guest. We had a young man who really shared his heart with us. And he talked about how difficult his childhood was. He had OCD, and it was very difficult. And he talked about how it almost got the best of him, but it didn't. And that one of the things he was able to do after all those years was to write a book. And he wrote a book called The Boy Who Cried Suicide. He said that he was going to finish that book, and one of the things he wanted to accomplish in that book was to tell his mother that he understood how difficult it must have been for her. And we listened, and we waited for that book to be done. Guess what? It is. And today, you're not only going to hear what he felt about his mother, you're going to hear from his mother. Ladies and gentlemen, please meet Nancy Chiudina and Joe Chiudina. Guys, what a treat having both of you here together. Not only did I read the book, but I don't have it anymore because I have to keep lending it to everyone who wants to read it. It's a fabulous book, but it wasn't an easy life. Nancy, we heard from Joe a little bit. Let's hear from you. What was it like raising a child with OCD?
Well, at the beginning, I knew nothing about OCD. I had to do research. I went up to Marist College. They had a seminar. A doctor from Boston came down. And I had to research my family because this is genetic. So it actually was on my mother's side. And after going to many doctors, and most of them don't know a lot about OCD. They know about the hand washing, but not what Joseph had, which was the beginning, body dysmorphic, and then when that was gone, it went to OCD.
So OCD is obsessive compulsive disorder. That means that there's something in the person they can't let go of. It's obsessive, and it takes them over. And in Joe's case, it was, I have to say this, a little weird, because his obsessive behavior was about his appearance, his looks, and he couldn't let that go. Joe, tell me about this obsessive compulsive disorder that you had. What was it that you were obsessing over?
I zeroed in on my face, and I asked the same question about 100 times a day.
Which was,
am I above average in the looks department? But, I mean, they were like variations on the question, but they were basically the same question.
And if you didn't get the exact answer you wanted, it drove you crazy.
Yes, it would drive me crazy, and it would drive my mother crazy, and it was just horrible.
You know, Nancy, you said he would wake up 4 o'clock in the morning and come to you and ask you that question. I mean, you must have been like, oh my God.
And then my husband was ill at the time. We would go in the family room, and we would just talk and talk about the same thing.
Yep.
So basically, I was an enabler. Didn't know at the time.
Right.
After learning so much about.
And it must have been a slow learn, you know.
It's if you don't know about it or know someone who has it, even if his was body dysmorphic at the beginning, and then OCD, which is also OCD.
Right.
It's a crazy thing that goes on in your head.
Because it doesn't make sense to you, and it made all the sense in the world to him. And not only did it make sense, it was like a compulsion.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Now, here's the amazing thing. You're not going to believe this. We have a picture of Joe during the time that he was going through all this. Nancy, hold that picture up and let's see if he had any reason to be concerned. We getting it here? Here we go. There we go. Believe it or not, there he is. There's Joe.
Second from.
Yep, second from the top. Ain't a bad looking guy. He was good looking. And yet, in his mind, he wasn't. And he just wanted to be reassured every day, every moment. So, pretty shaky. So tell me a little bit about when this all began. It was actually a little later on in his life. It wasn't as a kid.
Yes. Actually, many years ago, they thought people who were in college was so stressful, and it would bring on this, not just OCD, it could bring on bulimia, anorexic, anything. Then they realized that's the age. It's usually around 18 or 19. I saw Joe's anxiety in high school.
It hadn't reached the level.
No, he went to Europe. He came back from Europe, and I said, and it started with these questions. And
No, he went to Europe alone?
With a
Like a class?
a group. No, people he didn't know.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And all of us, and I thought he caught something there. You know, what
Because
did
it just, when he came back, he was a different kid.
Yeah, and it was just overwhelming. This book would explain it, but it's like going to a movie and saying, I have to see that movie again.
Yeah.
Because
It must have been an amazing experience for you to read this book. Because it had to bring back like amazing. How did he do? I mean, did he pretty much capture?
he's an incredible writer.
He is an incredible
I mean,
writer.
this is help from the writers group, but no professional training.
We took a ride, my wife and I, to go visit the kids up in Lake George, and we brought the book with us. She started reading it, and I say, "How's it going?" She goes, "Shh." and she read it all on the trip,
Right.
and
right.
she couldn't put it down. It's a fabulous book, but living it and reading it are two different things. Joe, talk to me about this trip in Europe. Did something happen there? Did you notice a difference? Now, when we talked earlier, you said, I think it happened before the trip.
Yeah, I think there was, I think it pretty much happened before the trip. Because I remember going on the trip to Europe, Yugoslavia, and I was, my whole thing was checking out to see if people were looking at me or staring at me. Because in my mind, that meant that they were checking me out, and that was a good thing.
And you were afraid that you weren't going to meet their approval.
I wanted them to look at me. I wanted them to stare at me because I had a feeling that was what, you know, I was, that took me as a sign that I was being interested in. And so there was, I mean, there were traces of it before it, but I know that when I went to Yugoslavia, it actually, I still had it then.
Yeah, and it seemed to increase then. Well, I mean, I can almost understand that. You were alone in a strange world, a strange place. These people didn't know you, and you wanted to make a good impression. But then you became obsessed over that good impression. Now, but you had said, Nancy, that before that, his behavior was such that Joe always was looking for other people's approval.
Yes, and the body dysmorphic came out of nowhere. I can't even remember except when he came back from Europe. This was before that. He did have anxiety, and there were a lot of, which is part of OCD, what ifs. What if I do this? What if this?
He's still like that in some ways.
There are times, yes,
when he
and
says,
I don't enable anyone.
Which is not, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It's Joe's personality. Joe wants to be sure that he's doing the right thing at the right time.
Yes.
And he needs reassurance, but then it was more than reassurance, asking over and over again. Now, you were going through a double whammy, because not only were you dealing with Joe, your husband was having some hard times. Tell us a little bit about that.
He actually came down with kidney disease when he was 37.
Wow.
Due to a strep infection. He had to speak at a seminar, and he was just throwing, he knew he had a bad sore throat, but he was throwing aspirins down, and then he swelled up.
Wow.
And he went to the medical center, which kept him off of dialysis. He did everything. He was golfer, club champion.
Wow.
He did everything. But 7.5 years on
It began to wear him down.
Oh, yeah. And
Now,
then-
how old was Joe at the time?
Oh, goodness. Joe was probably maybe 7.
Okay, so he was still
He was
young.
the happiest kid around.
And he's not your only child.
I have 5.
5 children.
Yes,
Oh, wow.
yes.
I didn't even realize that.
12 grandchildren.
Wow. Wow. Man, you look terrific for all those kids.
Well, thank you.
So,
Thank you.
So there's 5 of them. How did the siblings deal with Joe?
They were actually incredible.
Yeah.
Everybody handled it a different way. In fact, it's in the book.
Yeah.
And I was, of course, shocked because Joey was so into himself at the beginning of this, and then even after that. It amazed me that here he now is telling how each one of his siblings
Yeah, and you didn't even know he was noticing that.
I didn't. No, I did not. And it was a lot of doctors, wrong doctors who know nothing about obsessive compulsive disorder.
Yeah, now that's a whole nother story. Joe, you went through a whole series of doctors, some of them not so good. Tell me a little bit about some of the therapy that you've gotten over the years.
Well, back then, they were big enablers. I mean, they really
And all they did is just yes you.
they just yesed me,
And they weren't hearing what you were saying. In fact, you were crying suicide at one point.
yes,
And they weren't hearing you.
they were not hearing me. They were
They didn't
they
understand.
didn't understand.
Yeah, they just didn't. And they just thought it was a phase he was going through.
I went to a few of the doctors at the beginning, and I knew right away, this is definitely not something you treat with just therapy.
Yeah.
There are medications that it could be hit and miss, but there were doctors, oh my goodness, they put him on a medication. I didn't even know him.
Wow.
In fact, it happened to be around the time of one of my son's weddings.
Oh, wow.
And he was on so much stuff. Another time, he came over, he wasn't living at home, he came over to the house. We were going to another doctor, and I look out the window wondering why isn't he here yet. He's sound asleep in the car. I don't know how he made it over. Well, you know that was the last time I saw that doctor, or
Yeah.
Joey
Oh,
saw
yeah.
that doctor.
Yeah, and then from one doctor to the next, and there was one doctor
Yes.
that was really out of it.
Yes.
Joe, Tell me about that doctor.
He would yell at me, curse.
Yeah. I mean, I was amazed at what I heard in the book, and I'm sure there were things that I haven't heard, but it was unbelievable. You would call him, and he would swear at you, and
Yes.
yell at you, and say things to you, frightening things.
He did all the wrong things that a doctor could possibly do.
And excuse me, he wasn't a doctor. I found out later. He
Oh my
was
God!
a
So
social
later,
worker.
he wasn't even.
He was a social worker.
Oh my God! So he was acting as a psychiatrist, but was really a social worker, and he would say hurtful things. You would call him; he'd hang up on you,
Yes.
tell you never to call again. In all fairness, however, you would call him 30 times a day.
He'd limit the call. He'd say he'd only want me to call 5 times during the day, and I would end up calling like 20 times a day,
Wow!
to the point where like I would like, when I had a regular appointment with him, I'd bring over cookies to
To try to
soften
appease
the
him.
cushion.
Yeah. Wow. So that was probably about your most difficult times.
Yes.
Now, at that time, is that where you began to feel suicidal?
Yes, I would tell him. I would ask him if I, if I committed suicide wrong, would I still be above average? If I put the gun in my mouth and pulled the trigger and the bullet didn't work, or if the knife didn't work, would I
So you
would I
were
still be
even
above average?
obsessive in the way that you were going to kill yourself.
Yes.
But
And-
I never knew that.
And so that never even that therapist, supposedly what he is, never even consulted with you about the fact that he was contemplating suicide.
No.
Oh my God!
But I knew later on he would
That's what was
say
going on.
he was thinking in that way. Never today, but back
Yeah.
then. But I knew in my heart, and I have a lot of faith. And Joey had a lot of faith, even when he was.
Yeah, he
That is
still has faith. You're still a religious person. You go to church.
I don't go to church as much, but I do believe in God, and I do believe in the Bible, and that's pretty much what I rely on.
And so it got pretty rough.
Oh yeah.
Tell me about this first time that you actually said, I'm going to do it.
It was at night. I was driving. I was going to go up to the park, and I was just gonna. I didn't really have a plan in my mind. I didn't want to like see too much into what might happen or might not happen. So I went up there and I just had the knife, and it was cold outside, and I just didn't know how. I didn't even know how to slash my wrist, if you do it horizontally or vertically. So I just did kind of.
And you had to do it right.
I had to do it right, but I did not do it right, and that was a good thing. But at the time, as soon as I did it, I knew I was in trouble, because I had the scarring now, and I didn't
And
know
you were
how
bleeding.
I was bleeding.
Now, did you drive yourself to the hospital? Or?
No, I drove to a gas station. I called my mom. I told her what had happened. She told me to come over to the house. It was around Christmas time, I believe. And I went to the house, and it was funny because the next day I had a doctor's appointment, and the doctor asked me a regular doctor, he asked me if I had a cat, because it looked like a cat had scratched me.
Wow.
So-
So it wasn't really that deep.
No, it wasn't
but enough,
that deep.
Yep. But enough to cause a whole lot of concern.
Yes.
So you called your therapist and told him you attempted. What did he do?
I can't remember if I told my therapist or not. To be
Did
honest
you?
with
He was on the. Actually, at that time, I don't even know if you had Dr. Khan. We were still in search of
Okay.
different doctors. It's so many years ago.
Yeah. Now, you attempted more than once.
No, I pretty much just attempted one time.
Attempted one time, and you threatened to
And
do it other
I
times.
threatened lots of times.
And you, at that point, had probably become more aware that it could be a reality. So you got this Dr. Khan. Ooh, I don't know if we should be saying his name, but
He died.
yeah. All right. So you got this who you believed was a doctor, and he worked with Joe, and there was a point where you said, "I don't want you working with him anymore." It wasn't working out right. You had to try to find someone new, and you went in search of someone new. And you told him, "Don't see him anymore." And then you had to go to a place where they would work with you and help you to get back into society and do what you needed to do. I know you call it a halfway house, but your mom said it wasn't really.
No.
It was more of a...
So to help him get back, he lived with other people.
Yep.
He had his own room. To help him get back. To help him get back on the right track.
So this book captures a lot of that.
Yes.
And it captures those moments where you finally realized you had to step in. And you went from therapist to therapist to therapist. With this one doctor, you said, "Don't see my son anymore." I think you even recorded him.
I had
And
Joey record him because
Record
I
him
couldn't believe
because
the way he was treating him.
I mean, I feel the same way. There were things that were being said that were pretty scary.
Yeah.
And once he recorded it and you heard that, you said, "Whoa, this is not the answer." Now, and then, was it after that you began going to the halfway houses, or was it during that time as well?
No, it was during that time. He actually, I think he suggested that I go to
He suggested.
halfway house. In the beginning, he suggested
And
it.
Joe, that wasn't an easy time for you either there, right?
Not really. I didn't really get along with my roommates. I think during my stay there, like every roommate, I one time or another I didn't get along with, but it pretty much was centered on my therapist at the time and me calling him and over again and
Yeah. So in all fairness, you were on his case, and he was suffering as well. He had a death.
Yes.
Yeah, he was dying, and he was trying to deal with that and Joe at the same time. So I'm sure it wasn't difficult. It was very difficult for him as well. And it was all part of this long process of trying to heal. Is there any particular low point, Joe, that you remember where you just, now you look back and say, "I can't believe I even survived that"?
probably the turning point for me was the night that I tried to commit suicide. I don't know. I mean, I was so low at that time in my mood that I just was so out of it. I mean, I didn't even have a plan. I was just gonna run into the woods, slash my wrist, run into the woods, and die.
And it was just the bottom.
Right. It was just the bottom, and I would never. I'm never gonna do that again. I'm never gonna come to that point again, no matter how bad things get.
Now it's been a long time. Now it's been almost 20 years.
Yes.
And the two of you can look back, thank God, and say, we made it. Have you made it? Are you both through it now?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And this book is such a testimony to where he's gone. I want to credit the both of you because what you've both been through to get where you are today is a message to everyone out there. We are going to have our lows that we never think we'll ever get out of. And yet, we do. After all of this, what can you say, Nancy, to the audience and to those people who are going through things like children with drugs. He never got involved with drugs.
One doctor said, the doctor who I feel saved him with the right medication, Dr. Peters, he said it's amazing he never got into drugs or drinking.
Yeah.
You know,
he
have a
still
beer,
kept a
but he-
sound head
Yeah,
about him,
yeah.
and here he is today. He's been an active member of our writing group. His writing is spectacular. His short stories are things you can't forget, and this book is just a must read. Joe, if you could go back and talk to Joe, the younger Joe, what would you say to him, Joe?
I would say, Joe, take notes because you're going to need them later.
And if you wouldn't it have been great if you had kept a journal and you could go back to that journal and go, oh my God.
Yep.
But I am amazed that you can go back there. You want an honest opinion from me? I was scared to death when you told me you were going to write this memoir. I was so afraid. You must have been too.
Oh, I didn't want him to do it.
You say, don't go back there.
Yep,
But he's healed.
I know.
Joe, I just cannot believe where you've come, where you could actually go back and write that. Do you feel that you've taken weight off your shoulder by writing this book?
Yes, I do. And this is actually a history book in a way,
Yep.
because everything happened in the past, and none of it's going
And
to
now
rear its head again.
it's time for Joe Chiudina's future.
Yes.
Again, my compliments to both of you. It has been an awesome experience having both of you here. Thank you for tuning in and letting them share their heart and their pain. It has been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
You're welcome.